Right. I'm Ellen Wynkoop, and I started raising monarch butterflies back in 2014. I live in Eau Claire, Wisconsin right now, and we have lots of milkweed there. And the key is to find that milkweed and find the eggs for little tiny caterpillars, and you can raise them yourself. But you have to have healthy milkweed. I have a little plant that is popping up in a mowed area. They like to do that, don't they? I'll come over here and just show you. Milkweed, a nice soft leaf. You can touch it. It's tougher. If you look closely, though, we have somebody who came along for the ride. And you see on that leaf, he was there. You see him? I know. And can you see? Let me grab my flashlight and show everyone. This is milkweed. See that? See that? Excellent. That little caterpillar is about 2.5 to 3 days old. When they're born, they're very tiny. I love finding the monarch caterpillars. And I'm hoping to teach and share with you as well that it really is easier than you think. You just have to find them, and you have to have food for them. If you don't have their food, then they can't eat. Why do we help them? It's the monarch butterflies. We love them. They're beautiful, and they're all across the United States. But we live in a really special space here in the Midwest. The monarchs migrate, and that's one of the most special things. I get chills just thinking about it. These wonderful little monarchs migrate. Not the ones that are here, not that little guy I just showed you. He won't, or she. He or she will eat for 2 weeks, milkweed only, turn into a chrysalis, and hang for 2 weeks, and then emerge. So this little guy right now, we won't see as a butterfly until right around August 1st, roughly. Roughly. If the weather's warmer, guess what? Faster. It shortens. If the weather's suddenly colder, it takes longer. It's like baking cookies. Have you ever baked cookies? If you set the temperature wrong and you bake them too hot, they speed up. Same thing with the calories. If the temperature is colder, they slow down and it takes longer. But they still get there. Your cookies will still be done. It just takes a little longer. The monarchs are very unique in that they migrate. But the ones that migrate won't occur until the end of the summer, and that's when they head south to Mexico. Then that generation stays all winter long for about 6 months. Maybe we should all go join the monarchs now. Then in the spring, they begin to fly north again, but they do not make it up here because we're still cold. In March, we're still in snow here in Wisconsin. Whereas Oklahoma and Texas, they're warm. They've got milkweed, different varieties of milkweed. Some that crawl more on the ground, like ground covers. It's beautiful and a totally different milkweed. If you saw it, you wouldn't realize it's milkweed. And that's where the eggs are laid. And then those eggs emerge after 2 weeks of eating, 2 weeks of hanging as chrysalis, roughly. And then that's the ones that arrive here in May, and we start to see their eggs. Okay? That's the chrysalis that I have hanging in one of my buckets. So I'll show you in just a few minutes. I've got lots of slides, and I'm so excited to share with you. I've already been talking to you about this particular piece of information in that there's 6 months, roughly October, November, December, January, February, March, roughly 6 months for the overwintering generation. And then they arrive here. We start finding them mid to late May because we're finally out of the snow. We finally have spring arriving and things are warming up and our milkweed's popping up. And it just takes one plant. She says, I'm laying my egg right there because it's a little tiny caterpillar and it doesn't eat very much in the beginning. So the plant grows and the caterpillar grows. It's wonderful. So that first generation lives for about 4 weeks. And then those babies start and they live the next month. So we're roughly 3rd week of May to 3rd week of June. 3rd week of June to about the 3rd week of July, second generation. 3rd week of July to about the 3rd week of August. You with me? Each month, depending on when those first eggs are found. And then those in August are the ones that migrate. Because guess what happens in August? Do you notice when you get ready to go back to school? The days get shorter. Suddenly the sunlight shadows are a little lower on the horizon. And we're like, things are changing. The monarch butterflies stop mating. They're no longer just laying eggs throughout the whole summer. They're like, nope, we're stopping. It's going to be time to migrate. So it's called diapause. Diapause is the feature that says we're not going to mate and lay eggs. It's turned off. They head south. And then that's what you see in here. August to September, they start migrating and they go into the high mountainous areas of Mexico. There's a number of sanctuaries where these beautiful oyamel trees are. And if you have a chance, you can go on the internet and even see the monarchs hanging out all winter long. When we leave the monarchs alone, a lot of people say, just let them be. I'll grow the milkweed. Wonderful. You'll leave them alone, but only 10% survive. That means 1 out of every 10 eggs makes it into a butterfly. I'll say it again. Only 1 out of every 10 eggs turns into an adult. That's a tough life, but that's all insects, by the way. That's all basic insects. It's 10% survival rate. But guess what? When some of us help them, excuse me, I thought I had my next screen. I apologize. Okay, well, we need to talk about the eggs. So only 1 in 10 make it. She lays about 500 eggs. About. They've documented 750. Some have documented up to 1,000. I'm conservative with it. I say, okay, 500 eggs. Guess how long one female lives, though, when they're up here in Wisconsin. We're not talking about the ones that go over winter. How long does one female and male live? Any idea, Rosie? How long do you think they live? 6 weeks. Well, that's about 100 eggs a week. She's got to get busy laying lots of eggs. But when we help them and we bring them in, 9 out of 10 eggs can make it to be an adult. I have a 95% success rate. I have a screened-in porch. I have 1 buckets that I saved, and I have screens. Gather your supplies. It's inexpensive. Oops, excuse me. You can see this, but it's a 10-inch screen that's nice and soft. Fiberglass. I can pass this around so you can check it out. I just get a big roll from our local store. And then I have ice cream buckets where then I've trimmed carefully out the lid. This bucket is for the adults, the adult caterpillars. And I'll show some more of that here in a moment. I also have very small containers That so it may have been a cheese container, it may have been a yogurt container. Go explore and see what you can find. I then took a push pin and pushed little air holes into the lid. And right now I've got 4 caterpillars in here. All right, we can show this one for sure. He's about 5 days old. Can you see it there? I can't. Okay, hang on. On this top corner.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And we'll show you here. It's about a 5-day-old caterpillar. The problem with our wonderful monarchs, the problem is they can only eat one type of food. What if you were told that when you go to the grocery, you can only go shopping for spinach? Nothing else. Nothing. Nothing else in the whole grocery. You can only survive with spinach. Well, what if suddenly your spinach was no longer available, or they were spraying it with certain chemicals that made you sick and not healthy? One food source. That's what's the most difficult part about our monarch survival, is they have one food source. Whereas like the tiger swallowtails, black swallowtails, they have multiple food sources. So it's not just one thing that they can live on. So what if you were told you could only have one thing, lettuce, the whole rest of your life? But our milkweed is what's most difficult for the monarchs because of mowing. Mowing's okay, but we don't want to overmow. And then the spraying is what's the most difficult part. Spraying any chemicals because they don't have an immune system. So it's not conducive to survival. So I've already been talking to you a little bit about the cycle. When you get an egg that's laid, in only 3 to 5 days, it emerges. Well, guess what? That little guy that I showed you in the vase, we found its egg casing on the same plant. So I'll let you take that and look. I'm not going to bring it over there because it's so tiny. But the egg, I'm not sure if you can see this. The egg is not perfectly round. It actually goes to a little tip and has gorgeous little lines running along the side. I think of it as like a bishop's cap, a fancy bishop's cap. And so it's not brown and it's not white either. You suddenly see, oh, it's a ball of white. That must be an egg. Nope, more than likely that's the milk. The milk that somehow has seeped out. Somebody bumped it. Another insect took a nibble. And so after 3 to 5 days, they then crawl around and they start eating what? They can't go to the plant next to them unless it's milkweed. They climb around on it and they eat and they eat and they eat for about 2 weeks. And that's it. And depending on the weather. And then you don't see it right in here, but between the larval stage and the chrysalis stage is a J hook. They form on the top of the screen if they've been eating. And by the way, let me show you real quickly. In this particular bucket, I have caterpillars that are probably now 10 or 11 days old. I'm going to take the lid off. And one of them is a little younger than that. You'll notice the color is actually quite different. There's just 2 in there. Isn't that neat? And they're just climbing around and eating the milkweed that I've provided them. So that one's obviously a little younger, different color. Mm-hmm. Any idea why the color is so different than the bigger one? One's male, one's love it. Not correct. Now I'm going to carry this over. Oh, he's not going to let me. He's hanging on to something. I'm going to. One of the caterpillars that's smaller is darker. It's because each caterpillar in its 2 weeks of life goes through a skin peel. they shed their skin. It's called an instar stage. Well, this one is just a younger instar, and then when it finally settles, peels its skin, like a snake would, it'll be bright, and it'll go to the next stage. And it's cool. Oh, did you all notice what was in the bottom of the bucket? Did you notice some funny? Ignore the liquid. My little vase. And by the way, did you see that this is a yogurt container? And I used a little screen with a hole in the top and a rubber band to keep it on. And so I have fresh water in there, so my little cuttings of milkweed stay nice and yummy. You don't want to eat yucky spinach, do you? You want fresh spinach. You want healthy, crunchy. Well, I want good stuff too. So I've come up with all kinds of fun ways to make the food source as delicious and long lasting. It lasts a lot longer this way. So in the bottom of the bucket, there's some green
Circle
things. Little miniature rabbit droppings, but they're not. It's grass. Rhymes with grass. That's the caterpillar. We'll have to bleep that out. So it doesn't smell though, because it's just milkweed. It's just milkweed. So it's actually not a big deal. And I lock the lid on so that they can't crawl away. And then usually when I'm traveling, I figure out a way to keep it steady. But otherwise, I just let the bucket stay on my screen porch. I check it every day for cleaning purposes, give them fresh milkweed. And then I was telling you that in between here is the J hook stage. That's where the big fat caterpillar, after its 2 weeks of eating, then goes in and hangs like the letter J from the top of the screen. And after about 24 hours, so they climbed up after they're done eating.
I don't know if I've ever seen that.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I want you to notice also at the screen, what does that kind of look like on top? It's kind of whitish. Kind of like a spider web. That's what I think of. That's their webbing, because they're trying to attach themselves to keep them secure for their 2 weeks of hanging. That's Christmas. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll come over here and show you what it looks like.
Then there's this webbing, and there's quite a bit of it there. I don't know if you're able to see it or not. But that silk is referred to as the silk button. And it can be about the size of a $50, silver dollar shape. Sometimes they spread way out, but that's what they web and form as they're getting ready to do the J hook, because once they've let go, they're no longer eating, they're trusting that they're attached to the right thing. Well, where do they go? I have people tell me all the time, I can't find the chrysalises. Well, it's because in nature, they crawl away from the plant. So let's say this plant is outside in the yard somewhere, it finishes eating. You're not going to form your J hook on the plant because you're done with that plant. You crawl away and go someplace else to be safe. For how long? 2 weeks of hanging as a chrysalis. Where do they go? Maybe under, I've seen them on siding, edges of siding. I've seen them under a mailbox. I've seen them hanging in one of my Russian sage plants. I have seen them under, what's the word I'm looking for? Like old, just things in your yard, even like planters. Planter edges that have a rim, they hide because they're trying to protect themselves from the weather. So they want to go up under something and stay protected for 2 weeks. So that hopefully no insect finds them and does damage or well, anything. They hide out. These guys didn't get to leave, right? They stayed in the bucket. But then I'll watch, and in about 2 weeks, I'll notice them darken. All right. You stayed on that screen for a long time. Sorry about that. So there's the egg again. On the underside of one of the leaves, it has the tip on it. They're beautiful. We just don't have an egg today to show. But on your handout is my contact information. So if you find an egg, take a picture of it and send it to me and say, is this a monarch egg? And I'm happy to respond. I have people do it all the time. And there's some little guys munching. And they all seem to hang out together. By the way, when I put a bucket with older ones, I never put the little ones in there with them. Any idea why? The big ones might accidentally eat the little ones. Because as a big fat caterpillar, your job is to munch. They don't mean to hurt the little ones. It happens by accident. They're not trying to. But the little ones are like, I'm just doing my own little eating. But the big guy comes along. Would you put the first graders in with the seniors at the high school? No. You keep them separate. Okay? Life's easy. You have to be able to find your milkweed, have healthy milkweed. Know your sources. I have a friend who has an organic farm. I know I can go there. She doesn't spray, and I can go collect my milkweed for the caterpillars that I'm feeding. There's I have an image somewhere else. These are the top 2 most common milkweed in the state of Wisconsin. One's referred to as the common milkweed. That's what's here in the garden here at the Lower Library. It's what most of us think of when we're used to, oh, I know milkweed. But most people don't realize that we have something called rose milkweed. It's also referred to as swamp milkweed, but you do not need a swamp for it to grow. It loves to grow in our landscape beds and behaves itself most of the time. It's not like the common that pops up all over the place. And you're like, but I don't want it in the middle of my lawn. And so you have to pull it. But, and the flowers are just magnificent. The fragrance is incredible. But the caterpillars will eat all of the varieties that we have. And we have, on your list I gave out, the handout, are at least 10 mentions of the milkweed in the state of Wisconsin. We have at least 10 varieties of milkweed here. And at one point I had 8 varieties in my actual garden in Eau Claire, which is really cool. You walk around and go, that's a milkweed? That's a milkweed? Some of them are similar and they're tall, a single stalk. Others, you wouldn't realize that they're the same thing. So you have to get your supplies if you're going to bring them in. I have lots of different containers. I refer to as my small ones as the nurseries. Those the little ones can go in here. This is a leftover Chinese food container, I believe. I also use push pins to put a little air in there. And then my small container here that has the tiny ones in it. And then I collected my ice cream buckets and prepared them for the older ones. So I'll show you something else here. Why do you think I have a number on the top of my container? Any idea? Ah,
How old the caterpillar is.
has nothing to do with age. It's more I want to be able to track them because sometimes they're hiding. And by me putting a 2 or a 3 or a 4 or however many are in a container, I can go, I'm cleaning. I'm putting new food in. Oh, there's where you're at. So I know how many to count and make sure I don't throw them in the garbage by accident. Because we've done that.
That
So
one's easy to see.
He's pretty easy, but the little ones,
Yeah.
oh, the little ones are hard. Now remember I was talking to you about the instar stage where they're getting ready to shed their skin? Well, guess what? See that one? He's hanging onto the side, doing his own thing. As long as I'm gentle, it's not going to fall. Okay? This one is probably in the next 12 hours or so, it's going to wiggle out of its old skin. He's not going to move. Do not disturb them if they are not actively eating. Leave them alone. So, if there was some of the frass in the bottom and I needed to clean it, well, I would just tip it gently and use a little paper towel or something, clean it out carefully, and then put the fresh milkweed back in the bucket or container and wish them well and put the lid back on and say, I'll see you later.
How often do you change that milkweed?
As often as it's needed. Okay, so I keep some extra. If you were going to the grocery and you had lettuce, are you going to leave it on your kitchen counter? Oh, put it in the fridge, right? You want it to stay nice and fresh. That's what I do with my milkweed. But I have a container and I wrap it up with like a little plastic grocery bag, so it has water in the bottom of it, and the leaves stay so crispy and crunchy. They're delicious. Well, I wouldn't know, but they tell me. But aren't these leaves gorgeous?
Yeah.
These aren't in water, but as soon as I take them out, they don't eat for 2 days. The milkweed's still fine. Or if they're ready to eat again, it may be gone in half a day. So I only give them new food as it's really needed. If I look in there and go, ooh, I don't want to eat that myself, better give them some fresh milkweed. But otherwise, what you see here is pretty healthy stuff. It's ready. I check it twice a day, once in the morning and then once in the evening before I go to bed. Make sure, do I need to throw another leaf in there? I'll just go to my fridge, break it off, drop it in. So, good night. We'll see you in the morning. Sometimes they eat like crazy overnight. See? I love monarch butterflies, and I do get sidetracked just a little bit on my presentation. That on the far left is a beautiful early bloom of that rose milkweed that I was telling you about. Instead of laying on the underside of the leaves, which is common, most common, sometimes the female will just drop her eggs right into the blooms. She's like, this is a good spot. We're just going to drop an egg there. But usually she kind of glues it to the underside. Because why? If you were an egg, get ready to emerge, you're underneath, it's raining, hot sun, you're protected. I don't know why she does that one, but it's fine. It works. Do you see these guys? Newborns. Super teeny, tiny newborns. 1 millimeter. Look at your ruler. 1 millimeter is how long those guys are. And then they grow to about 2 inches. In how long, Rosie? 2 weeks. We got it. And there they are in the bottom of my bucket. And I have like a little miniature container. It's like an old butter lid. Oh, this is a fun one. I'll get a kick out of this. I'm not selling these products. Find your own wonderful creations. I have a Jif jar lid. I have a lid to the diamond almonds. And I punched some holes in there to then put like the little stem of the milkweed and watch. I put water in there, put it in the bottom of my bucket, and then set the leaves along the edge. So the leaves stay up, the frass falls to the bottom, keeps it nice and clean and fresh as long as possible. I got happy cats. Very, very happy. And you can see the frass that's in the bottom of that bucket there. But look at them all. Look at every one of them there around the edge of the bucket. Just like this little guy was. He's on the side. Don't disturb them. Just clean around them. As long as you're careful, you tip it over the garbage can. After I lifted out the little water container, I just tipped the whole thing and just gently used a damp paper towel to kind of wipe it out because it falls. It's like, it's dry, fairly dry. And so then after it was all clean, I then put it all back. And once they were finally finished resting and transitioning to the next instar stage, I started eating again. So sometimes the leaves will sit there for a day before they're ready to jump back in and lunch. These are just some of my, by the way, all of these photos are my own except for the 2 diagrams that I got permission to use from Journey North. These are all of my own photos that I've been taking since 2014. So those are the leaves, very different than the common milkweed leaves. Those are long and thin, that's the rose milkweed. And then every so often you get fun little designs. And I did not Photoshop that, by the way. The heart was because they were on the side of the bucket and their little tentacles. By the way, little FYI, the little, people want to call them antenna. They're only antenna when they're adult butterflies. When they're in the larval stage, that's referred to as tentacles or filaments. That's a cool thing. So the filaments were drooping because of hanging out on the side and gravity was tugging, and I ended up with a little heart. So I told you they grow from 2 millimeters. Oh, by the way, there's a dime. That's a real dime. I did not enlarge it, but I took the picture. And so the little caterpillar is no bigger than the year on the dime. And then it goes over 1,000%. 2,000% growth in about 2 weeks. Oh. And then that phase before it becomes a chrysalis, they drop down and stop eating. I have people who panic. It stopped eating. Did you keep eating on Thanksgiving? No, you have to stop and take a break. But in this case, they're